Broncos camp starts tomorrow, all right?
All right.
Brock Osweiler, going into his 4th year,
Yeah.
backup quarterback to Peyton Manning, possibly the starter next year. What percentage of the snaps should Brock Osweiler get at camp this year?
I have no teleprompter. Is that teleprompter out today? Okay, all right.
So what percentage of the snaps should Brock Osweiler get this year?
30%.
30?
Here's what happened in New England. Let me tell you what happened in New England today. Would you like an update on what their first practice like?
Update me.
No. Brady took like 90% of the snaps, and Jimmy Garoppolo, took about 10% with the first team. Is that a good idea since he's going to be the starter at the beginning of the year? Wouldn't you have him work more in? I would have, of course, Brock work with the second team on a full-time basis, but I would get him about 30%. How do you do that? Kubiak's going to give Manning a day off once a week. So they're going to have offensive day one day. On defensive day, let Brock take most of the snaps. Wouldn't you agree?
No.
Oh.
But I'll tell you why when you're done telling me why.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, no, I'm finished. About 30%.
Okay. I think that's high, and I'll tell you why. I think you have to keep Peyton Manning happy, and I think you have to keep Peyton Manning ready. And Peyton likes to take as many snaps as possible. Peyton has told us in so many words, and we've seen that when he's out of rhythm, he's not comfortable and he's not as good. So I think Peyton needs to take as many snaps as Peyton needs to take to keep himself, not just physically, but mentally into practice and into the games.
What do you consider a snap, though? I mean, do you consider
I'm talking about with the first team. I think Peyton should be taking...
In 7 on 7, 11 on 11? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think Peyton should be taking 80 to 90% of the snaps with the first team. Now, if he needs a day off, great. Let Brock take the vast majority of the snaps that day with the first team.
Then that could average out to be 30%. Let's say that Brock takes 10% of the snaps, as you're saying.
Okay.
Okay, so in a regular, full-scale session, he would take 10% of the snaps. You give Peyton 1 day a week off. That's what's going to happen, whether you believe it or not. He's going to get 1 day a week off. So if you know anything about math, that would be that Brock would then get 75. Zach would get, because the other quarterback, Simeon, is still recovering. But I've been told he's actually working out some. He's not at full strength. So you go 70, 20, 10 with the 3 quarterbacks. So if you do 70 one day and 10% the other days, that would be an overall total of about 30%.
Okay. I get where you go with this, but I'm saying if they're both there that day for practice, Peyton and Brock Osweiler, I think Peyton should have 80 to 90% of those snaps.
It's how you interpret the situation.
That's how I interpret it. You evidently interpreted it a little bit differently
than I do. On this program, I talk about 90% of the time, but when I'm gone, you get to talk 100% of the time. So that evens out to you talking about 30% of the time. That's the way I look at it.
What a deal for me.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
So we're past, well, so what happens, that there are 2 things that could happen. Peyton could get hurt. Peyton could get way ahead. And we know Gary Kubiak's not going to allow, like John Fox, Peyton to determine when he wants to come out.
Right.
Would you agree?
Absolutely.
So wouldn't that mean that probably in about 4 or 5 games, Brock Osweiler is going to get into the 4th quarter?
Yes. I think that would be ideal. I think that would be the ideal situation.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And maybe there's a couple of games where they're out of it, like they were in St. Louis, and you get Peyton out of there.
Yes.
So 6, 7 games, he's going to play about 25% of the time. So why wouldn't you get him at least 25% of the reps during practice?
Well, I'm close. I said 10 to 20%.
Hey, you said 10%. Okay, and I said 30%.
These math games
I think 30% is closer to 25% than 10 to 20%. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
You must have missed that class in math that day.
I missed school that day. That portion of the Big Stuff presented by the Celtic Tavern, the official sponsor of the Colorado Rapids.
Academics do.
The Celtic provides a bus to every Rapids home game. You can tailgate 2 hours before kickoff with all the folks who are on the bus going to the game. It's a blast. The Celtic is just a couple of blocks west of Coors Field on Blake Street. It's the Celtic Tavern.